Can you give us a summary of what Plan B is about?
It's a teenage quest movie revolving around two women of color who are extremely othered in their predominantly white high school town. And they go on a crazy, crazy quest with a lot of wild things happening in order to get the Plan B pill after Sunny gets pregnant at a high school party. Or doesn't get pregnant. She may be pregnant.
She may be pregnant.
She does not get pregnant, to be very clear. That's a huge delineation. She's not pregnant.
Not pregnant.
Not pregnant. Yeah. She just could be, you know.
She could be. This feels like a rare opportunity where all the pieces you've been sort of moving around are like all rising at the same time. So I'm curious how you're dealing with all that.
I've kind of tried to stay out of the discussions of art entirely during the pandemic, to be fair.
Why is that?
I feel like I had to redefine for myself what kind of artist I wanted to be. And that's why I needed to like kind of filter out the noise a little bit. But yeah, I think you're completely right. Things that I have been kind of gardening have finally been kind of blossoming now.
I work for a nonprofit theater and development, and that's the sort of thing that they tell you there. And it's taught me a lot about auditioning in that notion. If you're planting all these seeds so that these people, in my case, in this development job case, will call you back eventually, like down the line. Eventually they could give you like thousands of dollars to this theater and you'll make some commission. And I feel that way about auditions where like, or even really any creative pursuit that you do beyond auditions, in terms of like at least trying and like creating different paths for yourself, you have so many more opportunities. And I'm curious to see what it took for you to sort of let this garden kind of flourish.
I'm recalling conversations that I've had earlier in my career as a student about this very thing and how it was kind of presented to me in a way of like, this is a game that you have to play. The game is to like always, you know, canoodle your way into everyone's different whatever's orbits and make yourself known and hope that they'll get you back one day. And that's what networking is about. And I'm like, sure, yeah, but when you attack it that way, there is a level of, I feel, dishonesty and inauthenticity that will also get you back later and will blossom with it. It reminds me of those flowers that you like when you put the white flowers into colored water and the petals become that color. It reminds me of that, of like, you know, that's how like a lot of daisies and that kind of stuff, like when you see them be like bright purple or bright blue. It's exactly that. It's like the flowers will blossom, but what kind of water you put it in, it shows later. And I only bring that up because I truly feel like I didn't like maneuver myself into a lot of these different genres and all these different mediums. Like I genuinely wanted to figure out the rules of each of these genres, and I genuinely wanted to be part of them and learn my failings in each of them and where I flourished in each of them. And in doing so, now I can look around and be like, wow, this is like, there's a lot of stuff surrounding me that's all really, really different. And I get to be part of them all. That's so amazing.
2/3 of this, I'll be honest with you, when I first saw the trailer for Plan B, I seriously thought that like you were part of the writing of it. And I thought you were part of I know that's not true. Seeing that like somebody from the theater who I did know like who you were for some time. Like I had actually been doing this podcast when all the people from A Strange Loop were nominated for Lortel Awards. And in my mind, I was just like, Strange Loop, nothing else can defeat it. And then like when I saw you won this award for OCTET, I was like, I never actually checked out OCTET. When I listened to it during the pandemic, that hit me so much harder than I don't know, maybe you've heard this from people, but like people have been really clinging to their technology. And I say that also for myself, because so much of the time that we spend, I've used technology a lot for that. And that one song of yours, Beautiful, has these like incredible lyrics. And I found her and she found me in the lonely, ugly chaos of the internet. And I feel so much about the connections I've made through this podcast and even beyond it, like virtually, are sort of like the foundations of like finding like real intimacy in the world again as an artist. I'm curious how you got involved in OCTET.
Thank you for saying all that. I feel like OCTET was another blossoming moment where I really do feel extremely privileged and extremely lucky. And of course I am privileged. I went to NYU. That kind of network is incomparable in a lot of ways.
Unparalleled, yeah.
You know, yeah. And I could not have done that with a lot of things going right for me. You know, but OCTET for me was another blossoming moment where it just felt like someone along the way referred me. And that's how I've gotten into a lot of rooms. People have just been like, you know who you should check out? This person is really great to work with. Of course, there's a level of talent and intelligence there and collaboration there. But like, first and foremost, I really fully believe it's because I like to show up in a room and I prefer to be kind, or at least try to be, or I prefer to be as present as I can possibly be in being helpful toward the like fruition of the project. Someone I think referred me, and I was there for the first workshop, and then like half of the cast got changed out and replaced for the second workshop, and I held on with the same part, and then eventually we got to do that signature theater. So that was really fun. Also, I do want to loop back, and it's so funny that you do say about the writing of Plan B, because a lot of it was improv.
Was improv. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes
a lot
sense
of it.
to me. Yeah.
So it felt very, you know, true to us. Of course, like, so Pratika Srinivasan and Joshua Levy were the two writers of it, Hayden and John Hurwitz. So they were the producers of Harold and Kumar, and they were also some of the producers for this. So there was a script, and like we did stick to it, but there were a lot of things also that we were changing all the time, me, my co-stars, and also the director, to keep it fresh and alive. I just love that when you're watching a movie and you can feel the energy shift, and you're like, this just feels like it's soaring for some reason. And then later you're like, oh, it's because it was improv.
Yes, I'm so glad you clarified that. And what I love also is that like you can talk this way, but you're also like, you're mad silly. It's like you're one of the silliest fucking people I've seen on stage sometimes.
Good. I'm glad. I know, it's so funny. Like I go into this like, I'm speaking about things that I care about. And then someone will ask me a question where I'm like, fuck. Horny Indian women. And like, they're like, who is this person now?
That's like the juxtaposition about you specifically that I rock with, is you have this crazy classically trained instrument, but then at the same time, you're just like another silly fucking person. I'm curious what was improvised in the movie. It
was reactions to things. It was a lot of like, me and my co-star had a lot of like understandings of like how to create a beat and like kind of like a pattern and patter of conversation with each other, which was really helpful when it comes to improvising those moments. There were a lot of things. There was like when I was coming out of the gas station and I was like, oh my God, this is so, with the necklace, the friendship necklace, and I was like, this is so cute. I wasn't sure about you, but now, things like that. And like the little seatbelt moment where Sunny's like she's like on the way to the quest and she's trying to get that seatbelt off.
Yes.
That when she's freaking out and she was like, my head is pounding. I could have TSS. That's toxic shock syndrome, Lupe. I haven't even put a tampon in. It has carcinogens. That was all improvised. So there was a lot of little things like that.
You have people working on both ends, giving agency to people on like a studio movie at that as well. Is just like, what a privilege. And that actually, it baffles me too, because you went to Steinhardt. I don't know if like you ever got any of that on camera training, and that's very exciting. That's more exciting that you don't, because it leads you to ask questions that like the people who are already sort of focused on their like on camera-ness would never ask.
It was a boot camp for sure. I wasn't even the kid that did the YouTube like vlogs and shit like that. I've never done that. I've never seen myself through a camera ever.
How long have you been auditioning on camera?
Technically, I've been around for the last 3 pilot seasons, but because I was doing theater stuff, I was booked up during those 2. So I didn't really, like, my heart wasn't in it, and I really, like, honestly didn't want to do it. I was like, I'm not ready for it. It's not where I am in my life. I feel uncomfortable in these spaces. I just don't want to do it yet. And it was like this past pilot season before COVID is when I kind of made a decision inside me. I was like, I'm ready for it now. I'm going to try, and I'm going to book something. I remember people thought I was fucking annoying because I was telling all my friends, I was like, this is the year I book something big. This is the year I get to be on TV and film, and I get to have my little boot camp, and I get to learn a shit ton. And they're like, okay. And then I booked Plan B, and it's like, cool. Yes, I was completely ready for this, and it happened.
No, you manifested the shit out of that.
Very good at doing that.
As you should be. That verbiage is very important for a mindset, and somewhere between the mindset and the action
Yeah.
is that luck, like being ready for the moment and just being loose enough not to give a shit about it, and also just giving yourself that freedom.
Well, it's like,
And
are you using that word as an excuse, or are you using it as an explanation? And for me, I very much use it as an explanation for my like mental agility and prowess, and my true belief and faith in, if I put all my energy towards something, then the universe has no choice but to listen.
one of the things that you've spoken about when you were talking about this movie was past teen movies are like always so exploitative, and they sort of lean on the narrative that in some ways pornography kind of pushes, and like they sort of use that as sort of like a crutch for aesthetic to make it more universally appealing. And with this movie, it just feels like instead of taking all that energy, it's as if it recentered it towards like the autonomy of the two lead characters.
I'm so glad that you said about the autonomy, because that's really what they're in, potentially dangerous situations. No one is denying the fact that they are two, like in this state, in this town, they are two minorities. You know, no one's denying that, but that fact is never used to take advantage of them or to belittle them or disrespect them, or the power's always with them. Even when they're getting catcalled outside of a gas station, those people look like idiots and we're in charge. We're driving the scenes. And that makes all the difference.
I don't want to just, make this a testament to like gender as a whole, but I would say that that's the difference between like women leading a movie about women and men leading a movie about women, right? Is that you're like every box is checked in terms of like the safety of that shot, making sure that like we know where we're focusing our energy. And I honestly don't even think this movie, people wouldn't have had the mind to make this 5 years ago. Like when I was even just getting out of school, I think Booksmart was like the top thing and was swapping the gender of Superbad, right? But I do think that this specific movie about two women of color and exploring their autonomy just beyond, making sure that like we have an equitable workplace on set, really exploring each of their stories was like so important to this. And I think it not only like adds autonomy to the two of you and your work and what lies ahead for you two as actors in this industry, but it adds autonomy to the audience who saw it. So we love to see that. We had a Judge Danforth reference not like 3 minutes into the movie. I was loving that. That's how you know theater people were involved. I knew I was safe there. A main focus of this movie also is not so much harping on your mistakes and self-forgiveness. As a teenager, were you similar to Sunny in that way, or were you already pushing against the narrative yourself?
At Sunny's age, I was more of a Lupe. I was a lot more, everything's fine. And I'm internally combusting a little bit, really trying to rebel and push back of like what's expected of me. And so there was a lot of anger there. There was a lot of like simmering emotions there as Lupe. And Vic, who plays Lupe in the movie, I think she was very much a Sunny. So we kind of did a little switcheroo. But in middle school, I was a little bit more like Sunny, just very earnest and earnestly trying to have ownership over myself. And I did feel a certain sense of like, yeah, whatever, I'm a cool bitch. But then I didn't realize until later that like, oh, people don't see me that way. There's a kind of conflict in my brain of like how I see myself versus like how society views you. And it's that moment that every single person has, I think, whether you're queer or a person of color, where you're like, you realize, oh, this is how I'm seen. Or like, this is where I stand in the macro world. Didn't know that until now.
I absolutely feel that as a queer person. I felt that a lot when I was a teenager too, because I specifically would be like walking around just like being like a little loud in the body and the self. And people would be like, you can just like act a little straighter. It's like not a big deal. And I'm like, oh, now that I know that it's not a big deal, I guess I'll just like be a little louder and
Right.
like, yeah. And obviously I think when we're teenagers, we have so much like conflicting narratives in our head about like be the beat of your own drum, but then everybody around you is just like, it's almost in some ways like a little example of what the rest of the world looks like,
Right.
while you don't have the freedom that adults have. And I think that's what makes teenagers' lives a lot harder.
Yeah, I have a huge respect for teenagers, especially after playing so many teenagers. I used to be, still am, used to be like terrified of them, annoyed by them, etc. And now I just have nothing but the most deep respect for them, because everything is 0 to 100. But also, even if the microcosm of high school that they are in is not representative of the world, that is their world. They don't have the wherewithal to see beyond it yet. And so yeah, even if you're like, be yourself, march to the beat of your own drum, and then everyone is like, the drum you own is wrong.
Ugh.
Then it's like, great, where do I go from here?
I even felt that wanting to go into acting because nobody else in my school was. And my guidance counselor was just like, it's not too late. I'm like, oh, it's senior year. Like, the applications are set. Like, are you gonna call these colleges and ask them to transfer me from like the BA in theater to marine biology? I don't think so. I just have notes and notes and endless notes of just like the way you pep yourself up in your party scene, where you just go through your closet, seeing everybody downstairs, having seen them all like dressed, hot, so to speak. And I have been there running through my closet. I've definitely like cut a sleeve. It's one of the most accurate portrayals I've seen of a teenager.
Good, I'm so glad. I know, it's always like a fearful thing of like, am I gonna look like fucking ancient in this? And I was watching and I was like, no, I feel like I really hit the mark as far as like, you're like, you think that they're mature or whatever, and you're like, oh no, they're trying to convince themselves that they're mature so badly, and then something happens and they freak out, and you're like, oh no, these girls are 17, they're 17.
Yes. With the Dear Evan Hansen trailer, all these people are like hamming on Ben Platt because he looks like 47 or whatever, and I'm like, you know what, like I almost understand why they didn't think that was going to be an issue, but I just wish that like they tested an audience of people that were not most likely the friends of those people, but by then it would have been too late. So
I have such mixed feelings about that entire thing. I really do, because being on the other side of, it's like you worked really hard on a thing and then it's out and then people are just really just talking about the way you look is like really shitty, and like it's so hard. And at the same time, I'm like, y'all, you're still centering so many white people in the story, and you could, and at the last minute you cast all of the friends as people of color because you wanted to cover your ass, and it shows, and it's brutally transparent.
And I have so much more respect for Nick Dodani than just a supporting role that he plays. For example, he's one of like the most unique sort of queer Indian makers in Hollywood, like such as yourself. All they keep giving him are these straight like best friend. When do you realize like the treasure that you have in front of you? This kid is writing scripts. He is not just relying on like, and I honestly, I do feel the same way, because I think about Ben Platt and I'm like, what if I could sing like that? And I was one of the only people I felt like could sing like this. And I saw myself in this movie and everybody was shitting on me. That would feel really bad. It would, I empathize, but like, I don't empathize with like, I don't think this needed to be told either, almost.
I don't either. I completely agree. And I have buds in it, and it's just a shame because it's a story that I think is really toxic. And okay, yay, it's an original musical, and we love that, and I do want to celebrate that. At the same time, come on, we've all worked long enough in this industry where we know that how many amazing original stories there are by people of color and by trans people that really deserve to be uplifted, that are not even a fraction as toxic as this. So there's room for it all. And yeah, and as far as Nick Dodani goes, like, he's gonna make his money and he's gonna be seen and whatever, and I don't think he needs to, I'm just gonna put it out in the universe. He doesn't need to worry about how people see him or what he's receiving from that end of the industry, from the other side of the table, because I truly believe, I agree with you, he's a maker, he's a creator, and I think he's going to be just fine, and he's going to be able to do that for himself. I do believe that.
Sort of gives me the vibe that he doesn't give a shit.
I'm done with the others worrying about the other side of the table. Not that I really ever have, but it's not worth it because we just live our lives differently and we see things differently. And if it doesn't click, then that means that I'm going to have a bad time working with you anyway. So I don't want to. If I don't get cast in something, and I truly mean this, and I'm not trying to be facetious, the minute I'm not cast in something, I see it as the universe itself saving me from something that would have been awful and that I would have had an awful time on.
How did you come to that conclusion?
Every project I work on, every project I audition for, I see it from like a macro level of like, how is everyone trying to make this project happen? And what is everyone going for? What is the tone of the entire piece? I'm envisioning the costumes, the set, the lighting. I'm seeing everything. Because if I understand that, I as an audience member, what am I supposed to feel? You as a director, I get all that tonally in my head, and I go in and then I do what I think they're looking for, and they're not, and they don't cast me for whatever reason. And I'm like, our visions don't match. If our visions don't match, I'm not the right person to be in this room. If you're not doing what I think this should be crafted as, then yeah, clearly don't hire me, please. I don't want to do your vision.
That's going to make me feel so much better about the like 40 self-tapes I have to send out in the next 2 months. Now,
I know, it's tough.
Yeah, but obviously, like, and you're still doing all that stuff. Like, I hope people don't realize, like, yeah, like, you can still be the lead of a movie. And you still like gotta send in those tapes for whatever, because you're so diversified over the mediums. Although, like, if you ask me, offer only. I hope you don't think that way, and I'm sure you.
No, it's so funny. Like, people are like, "How is your life different?" And I'm like, it's not at all. It feels pretty much exactly the same. I can get the extra guac sometimes. That's what it feels like. That's what it is.
Just another thing I wanted to celebrate about this movie, and it goes back to what we were saying about Evan Hansen, is that the people behind the table are making decisions about the people on the shows and on film and on TV that are going to be the leads of these movies. And right now I'm seeing a huge surge in like the amount of women of color that are getting narratives about themselves that are like authentic. And even, I believe, as you've said, you know, you've had to, during this process, sort of balance the sort of shame that you brought from your experience, and sort of make sure that like there's still like a lot of joy left over. And having a director lead that is great, because we're seeing people like you, people like Midori Francis, Mahala Harold, who is in this movie, by the way. Have you seen Industry?
So actually, Mahala gave me her login to watch it because I don't have HBO.
Oh,
Don't tell HBO. They'll sue me. They'll sue her. But yeah, she was like, I was like, oh, I don't have an HBO Max. I want to see your show. She was like, here, take mine. I was like, hell yeah. But she's such a fucking superstar. I literally am in love with her. I DM her probably every single week just to like bitch about things. Yeah, she's my boo. I love her so fucking much. I wanted to say something about, you mentioned it earlier, and I put a flag up in my brain about it. A lot of the times, directors who are not specifically the ethnicity or the gender or the whatever of the characters that they're speaking of can also make a great movie about the person, right? Like, we've all seen it. I think there's a nice middle ground with Plan B that's happening, where it's like, Natalie's not an Indian person. You know, she is a Latinx woman person. She's a Latina, but she's not an Indian person. But she could still authentically tell those stories because of her practice of inclusivity, which is so much more than just having the diverse people, or like diverse people, whatever that means. Having the people that like, oh, you're this color, so this is what it is. No, some of the most toxic workplaces that I've worked in have been all Indian musicals with all Indian creative teams.
Wow.
Because the practice of inclusivity is different than just blind representation.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, I'll speak on this for like a minute. My experience since last June was with a non-union theater company led by a gay artistic director who was a person of color, and there was still problems with exploiting racial trauma in all these stories. So I agree with you that it's obviously clearly not enough to like check your boxes anymore. You kind of have to like be kind to people and not just say it like Ellen, you know, like actually like take time out of your heart and make space for other people. And generally, like when I work that way, I have to worry less about like sort of bringing myself to everything, because it's really not about that as much as it is just like making space and time for people in your heart. And there's not a lot of time for that in our industry, people seem to think.
Definitely gotten myself into some trouble where I have given people a little bit too much of the benefit of the doubt, where I'm like, well, they're white, but there are people of color on the creative team who they're saying that they're listening to, and so maybe it will be fine, and maybe that they won't exploit the situation, maybe they won't fuck up the situation. And then I've been really hurt, because it's like, you're either not listening to these people, or you're not listening to the cast, or you're not being completely transparent in your practices. And there's just like an unwillingness, I feel, from a lot of white liberals behind these tables to acknowledge that they have the upper hand here. As the people that are casting, as the people that are accepting us into the jobs, they have the upper hand. Therefore, the least they can do in these situations is have full transparency.
And it's going to make their job so much easier down the line. It's going to completely give them the opportunity to see things they would have seen when it was way too late. We have this conversation in the midst of like In the Heights just coming out, right? And there's a shared celebration of that. It honestly, for me, it felt like I was getting punched in the tear ducts when I was like watching it like constantly, because I was in it a very long time ago in a community theater production, which obviously, of course, isn't great, not a great thing to say. That, and it does exist on YouTube, so, and it's not my video, so there's nothing I could do about it. It's all over. And there's also the conversation about the erasure of like Afro-Latinx who basically aren't represented in any of the leading roles.
Everything I say matters, but it matters less in the situation what my opinion is on the movie. Right. That being said, I have been seeing a lot of, there's this conversation about baby steps versus baby step change versus huge revolution, right? And I go back and forth on this all the time. And of course, it's a case-by-case scenario. I thought that this was flawed, but an overwhelming win. It was more than baby steps of a win through my eyes. I thought they got so much of it right while also still being wrong.
Because I know the show so inherently, like me and my friend were sitting next to each other and we were like, where's the lottery? I don't understand. Why isn't this the center of this story? I suddenly realized, like, when they revealed it, I was like, oh, they actually substituted the necessity for like currency being the American dream for heritage and like family being more centered. So it's like we were saying about Plan B, it's just recentering the narrative towards something less capitalistic and a lot more organic. I did not like 96,000. I liked seeing all of the people in 96,000. I think like that scene was one of those rare moments where you actually saw what Washington Heights looks like. But personally, I think Sonny got done wrong by having like a bunch of water splashing in his face during that rap. I think that kid is so talented, and I think it got in the way sometimes. I'm not this that Bugsby choreographer dude that they were trying to go for. I see it, but nah, that was such a John Chu move too. Yeah, you know, he would do that. He's all about scale, but you know, that was my only thing with it.
I don't know the original musical well enough. It was actually my first time watching it all the way through was the movie. I'm actually like not that much of a musical theater like person. Like I don't know a lot about musical theater, which is like history, really? Which is so funny. Yeah, I just like gravitated toward certain stories that I really like and I resonate with. It's so random that you'd be like, what are you talking about? But like literally some of my favorite shows are like Passion by Sondheim. It's like it's actually, I don't know why I'm saying probably. I'm like backing up now. It is my favorite show of all time, is Passion.
Far out.
People like hated that show when it came out, and I just think it's so beautiful and disgusting and disturbing and wonderful. But that's why I'm like, when people ask me like, hey, like what's your dream role? And I'm like, I truly, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I don't have one. I don't think that there's roles that are written for me. That's my favorite. That's my dream role. Every single time there's been a role that I get to develop, that's what it is. There's so much agency there's so much autonomy. Me and my partner were just talking about how last night about the agency in film and TV is the kind of agency you get in like a 9-to-5 job, where if I go in to interview for a job for a managerial position and they're like, yeah, great, like we don't know you, we're getting to know you, whatever. If I get the job, I walk in the next day and I'm the manager. That's that. I have that autonomy. And that doesn't happen in theater. It's like you could be in workshops for years and you still don't have any sense of job security or authority in the room. And with film and TV, it's more like the manager, where it's like, you're no one, we don't give a shit about you. But if you come in and you do the audition and you're the person, the first day of work you come in, it's you. You have authority in that room. You are that role. And that kind of agency is like, and I hate to put in that capitalistic term, but really that's what it feels like. It feels like, yes, I have power. You gave me this job. You gifted me this job. You're not dangling it.
It's funny because I love theater so much, but like, it's, as I'm getting older, I'm like, I can't believe you people are so stupid, so blind to see that like the reason people are going to TV and film gets treated with more respect as a consultant to a writer than he does on like some other things.
Yeah, and selling out. It's not the money. It's not selling out. It's agency. It's fucking respect.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I loved seeing you in there, because having not even been on Broadway yet, it finally shows recognition of like theater beyond. I mean, I say this, OCTET was on 42nd Street, but the idea of theater beyond 42nd Street. You have this residency at 54 Below called Sounds of Healing, Friday, July 2nd. What are the sounds of healing? What is the music that you love that speaks to you right now?
I'm doing a lot of different genres, like to really segue from what we've been talking about this whole time. So many different genres. I'm doing like a Polish art song. I'm doing like John Denver. I'm doing Tank and the Bangers. I'm doing India RE. I'm doing a lot of stuff.
Did you grow to know them during your time at school, or are these people you grew up on?
Some of them are during quarantine, some of them are during my high school years. And my goal through it was, these songs that we almost forget exist in our lives because they're very deep in our shuffle and they always come on and they're just like this one little tiny perfect pocket of song that's random and doesn't have context. It's just like a song that we stumbled upon and we're like, oh, that's a beautiful song. It's not about the artist. It's not about anything except this one little vignette of beauty. I wanted to pull all of those songs out of my shuffle and do them.
Exposing people to all sorts of music they would have never heard is actually far more exciting to hear in 54 Below that you're doing that versus your, Sondheim set, which is dope, by the way. Ellery Ward, she was just on the podcast and she put out this incredible album of like Sondheim songs inspired by Sufjan Stevens, like to that style. He has a song from Passion on there, I actually think, but it's a lot of Follies, a lot of Sweeney, and it all works. It all slaps. So we love to see that. Kuhoo's Cloud is Thursday, June 30th at 9 p.m. Streams. What's this?
I'm pre-recording the whole thing, but it's going to be a compilation of, it's going to be as if you stumbled into someone's iCloud storage and see all of their videos back to back to back, just as if you're just kind of like sifting through their lives. So a lot of it's going to be self-tapes that I have written, I've written self-tapes. Some of them are going to be really realistic. Some of them are going to catch conversations that I'm having with someone in the room that you don't see, or maybe a FaceTime call with my mom. But it basically tracks the jaded, sometimes racist journey of someone who is being branded every single given moment by the kind of breakdowns they're receiving and expecting to carry out.
Whoa. So this is much more about the industry and how it perceives you and how you perceive it in response. That's fascinating.
Yeah, of like how much of our personalities are dictated by how we're branded. And do we rebel against it? Do we move closer to it? How are we psychologically dealing with that trauma of being perceived all the time?
It's really important to be able to see yourself for where you're at and not where people sort of want to brand where you're at, because it's so easy to like just go down somebody else's path because somebody told you to, and I'm glad you're not.
Yeah, I mean, I've had my fair share of body dysmorphia too because of this industry, but Yeah, it's exacerbated definitely by well-meaning and really terrible casting and casting directors.
I was losing weight as the lockdown was beginning, and I was going on my last auditions, and these casting directors and even like piano bar people were like, "You look, hey, let's do a song. What happened to you?" I mean, funny enough, recently I've been seeing the little squares about body positivity being like, when you see people again, these are the things you should know what to do. But I don't even like how it's dictated. I just feel so conflicted about that whole movement of body positivity. And I understand its place, and I honestly, it made me stronger before I decided to make any changes to my health. It works well in moderation, but I feel I equivocate about it all the time.
It's like one of the most untalked about, even though it does feel like people are talking about it all the time. I don't think people are talking about how pervasive it is globally. This like epidemic of body trauma and body dysmorphia. It follows you around. It really follows you around. But if you do watch it, the camp residency, there's going to be a little bit of that as well.
I love everything I've seen from all of these artists, just the breakdowns of it, things about like the trans experience, things about dating. Sort of feels like ARS NOVA has always been that place to sort of be that habitat for people to just sort of coexist with each other as artists. It feels like a compound, is what it feels like, and I'm here for it. This has been like such a rewarding conversation, and for the record, some friends of mine have reached out to you before, like as fans, and they told me you were always nice to them. So like to hear that you are just a wonderful person when I'm not talking to you, I would have assumed right away. But to hear it from others, and when I told them you were going on, they were all just like, trailblazer, I believe one of them said.
Thank you. Oh, that like makes me emotional. That means like really the world. That's the greatest compliment I ever hear, is when someone is like, oh yeah, this person said you were nice. I literally tear up. I'm like, oh my God, I hope so. Because I really think I'm so mean. I'm so hard on myself in that way. So I just really, I hope so. I hope so.
I don't think your external personality is any indication of your character. Is it such a bad thing to say? Like, whether you feel like in one moment cold, it doesn't mean you're a cold person. A lot of my friends aren't the like most warm people right away. That doesn't speak to who they are. That doesn't speak to their character.
It's all just defense. It's all just always defense mechanisms. That's all.
And honestly, you gotta protect yourself. Like I hear that. So all of y'all should go check out Plan B. It's now streaming on Hulu. Kuhoo's amazing in it. Vic is amazing in it. Natalie Morales directorial, like second feature film, and I had no idea she directed it until like after I'd watched it. I was like, damn, this it's incredible. I thought it was like seemed like somebody who had been directing for like 15 years, but she knew the genre really well, and it shows. And then you could check out Kuhoo's Cloud as part of the ARS NOVA residency, Thursday, June 30th at 9 p.m. And Kuhoo Verma Sounds of Healing, Friday, July 2nd at 9 p.m. at 54 Below. Congratulations again, because this is, what an exciting time it must be. Your family must be very proud.
Oh, yes, they are. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. It's been lovely speaking with you.